Guys, and welcome to a new GTK ProgressBar tutorial. Today we are going to move on and see how we are going to create the set fraction callback function, which I told you in the last video, because we need this function. Without this function, of course, we cannot compile our program. As you can see, we get an error which says set fraction callback undeclared. So let us declare it and define it, which means I'm going to declare right here, and of course we need a GTK overlay, and of course we need to define it as well. Okay, now before we do that, before we work with the set fraction callback, we need to make some changes also in the main function, which means the first thing which we are going to change, we need to get some name to the progress bar and label, because we need them for our CSS later. So GTK widget set name progress bar, and of course for the progress bar we are going to say progress bar data, whatever you decide which name you get. And of course for the label we are going to do the same thing. GTK widget get set name, set name. The first will be the label and the second will be the label data. This name we are going to use them later in our application. Now to work with the label and the progress bar, because we need to work with those two, the progress bar and the label, inside our set fraction callback, we are going to make a connection between those two with the overlay itself. So I'm going to call g object set data on the overlay, and sk I'm going to use the same name. I'm not recommend you, because you should use a name which is unique, but me, just to show you the difference between them, I'm going to provide this one as well. Now we need one for the label, which will be of course the label data. Now let's see. At this point we are creating a connection between the progress bar and the label and the overlay. I forgot a letter. And now, because we have it, let us work with our function. So the first thing first, which you should always check, you should better be 100% sure that you work with what you need. So g return if fail GTK is overlay. So if you don't have an overlay to work with, then just don't do it. Now, because we checked, the next thing we need a GTK progress bar pointer and a GTK label pointer as well. Now the next thing what we do, we need to basically get those two objects from our overlay, which we basically set them with object set data. So we are going to say progress bar and then g object get data, and of course the thing which we need to pass here, it will be the thing which we did in the main function. The same thing goes for the label. G object get data, and of course we need to get from main this information again, to be sure that we are providing the right name and not something else. Now, because we got them, all we need to make some checks before we move on, to be sure that the progress bar and the label are there. So I'm going to say if progress bar is equal to null, or it is not GTK is progress bar, then we need to return. You can put something there, whatever. The same thing goes for the label. If label is equal to null or it is not GTK is label. If one of them fail, then we should not work with the set fraction callback. Okay, so return. Now, because we took care about everything, which means at this point we are checking that overlay, it is indeed overlay, and then we got the progress bar and the label. Just be sure you see I declared the GTK progress bar and GTK label instead of GTK widget because I don't want to use those casts again and again. Now we're checking that this progress bar is not null, and of course we are checking also that if it's not null, it should be a progress bar. The settings goes for the label. We are checking the label if to be not null, and of course our label should be a label and not something else. And now because we have everything we need to work, and because it should everything work, the first thing which we are going to use, it is a function which is called GTK bar get fraction, because we need this one right here. It says it is a function which returns a double and returns the current fraction of the task that's been completed. So in our case it needs the progress bar, and the fraction it is from 0.0 to 1.0, which means because it returns the fraction that has been completed, we need it, but we know that if it returns that number, we don't have it. It means it will be 0, and at the time you will call it, because we didn't made any progress, which means that we are going to say GTK fraction, G double, sorry, fraction. We are going to point it right here, and now the progress bar, you see we need no cast. And then now because we have it and our fraction now is 0, we are going to update first before we move to the next thing. So I'm going to say fraction, it's equal to fraction, let's say plus 0.05. At this point, basically our fraction has something. If we compile it and run it at this point the way it is, let's see what happens. If you get some errors, it should not. Okay, we have something here which means it's working, but we see nothing because we don't do nothing. Anyway, it is working, that's good. Next thing which we need to create a buffer where we can basically print something with the help of our progress bar, because we need that label to work somehow. So I'm going to say g char buffer, and then of course the next thing which we call, I'm going to call g string, because this is very important, string duplicate, but with printf, because we need to print something here so that it's working. And at this point, what do we need? We need fraction times 100. You will see why in a second. So which means now I need a %f, and of course we need to I'm not going to print the decimals as well. You are going to do it yourself if you want to. So I'm going to say .0 and then another 2 of the %, and now fraction times 100. This is very important for us. .0. Okay, now because we have the buffer, we created the buffer and we create the fraction, we can work with them. And I'm going to say at this point, if the fraction it's less than 1.0, which is indeed, we are going to say at this point GTK label set label. Of course the first one will be the label and the second one will be the buffer. Now because we have it, we can now basically call the next function, which is called GTK ProgressBar set fraction, which says it's a function which it does nothing, takes a progress bar and a double fraction, and cause the progress bar to fill in the given fraction of the bar. The fraction should be between 0.0 and 1.0 inclusive. So in other words, if we call this function, basically we can move that progress. We can give it a movement. So what do we need? We need a progress bar, and the next thing which we need a fraction. Which fraction? Well, this one, which we set it right here. Okay, because everything looks okay and everything should be fine. The next thing which we need, if it's less than let's say if it's less than 1.0, what happens if it is not, if it gets updated to 1.0, then at this point we are going to say GTK progress bar set text. How was its name again? Where is it? Right here. GTK progress bar set text. It is a function which basically says cause the given text to be appear next to the progress bar. If text is null and the show text is true, then the current value of the fraction will be displayed as a percentage. So if text is not null and show text is true, the text will be displayed. In this case, it will not display the progress percentage anymore. So if the text is the amp is string, the progress bar will still be styled and sized suitable for containing text, as long as show text is true, which is very important for us. We need to be sure that it is working. Okay, we are not interested about this part because by setting it true, because we are not working with the text, which I already showed you in the last video about where you are basically printing the percentage of the progress bar, where exactly we were talking about the GTK, about the activity mode, where we don't need exactly to know what exactly happens, which means it could be basically a searching or a loading or something like that. So there was needed, but here in this case we don't need to call or to show the text. This is very important. We need only this function. So I'm going to copy it, and then because we have it now, I'm going to say progress bar. Even if you won't see nothing, because this 100% you don't see it, but I put it there for you. Just comment and see the difference, because I'm going to work with the label GTK label set label, and this time I'm going to say done, because once that we get to 95%, the next one should be 100, and in this case it will be done. Because we took care about this, the last thing which we need of course to free our buffer. Don't forget to free every time you work with memory. So let us check again. What do we have here? We create a function, a callback function, which will be called when the button will be clicked. It provides us GTK overlay. We are checking that we have indeed the overlay, because we said right here GTK object connect swapped, where we are swapping the overlay with the button. So we need the overlay, and we call the GTK frac callback. Okay, because we have it, the next thing we need a progress bar and the label. The connection which we created in main right here with the help of GObject set data. We are retrieving it with a GObject get data with the same k names. Because we have those things and we get the progress bar and the label, just to be sure we are checking against null, and of course if the GTK is progress bar is not, then it should return. We should not work with if one of both fail. The settings happens if label is not null, it is null, or the label is not a label. Because we have it, everything is fine. We need to get the actual fraction, which of course it will be null at this point. Because it is null, we are updating it with fraction 0.05, just to move a little bit. And then the next thing which we are basically create a buffer by printing all this information times 100, so fraction times 100. And because we have the buffer, basically we need to start work with it. So we are saying if the fraction is less than 1.0, then we are printing the buffer and we are making some progress. Else, if the GTK progress bar set, else if the fraction is not less than 1.0, it should be the text to 100 and the label to done. And The last thing which I forgot, we need to, of course, to progress the fraction. If you want to progress more, I'm going to call a new progress. And now let us compile it and run it and see what happens. If it's working, it should work. So I'm going to wait. Now let's see. Now we have processing 0%, 5, 10, 50, 20, 25, 30, 40, and so on. 85, 19, 19%, 100. It is done. You see now 100 because I said done. So basically, if you remove this call, because we are just relying on the label and we are not interested on the progress bar, its information, we are creating our own. You see, everything works fine. And this is the way you do it. And I think it is quite clear. Okay, the next thing which we are going to do in the next video, we are going to see what's the story with the CSS, because we just gave two names. The first one was the progress bar data. Let's say CSS to be 100% sure that we are not messing around by having the same name for the CSS and also for the data key which we are providing when we are connecting the progress bar with overlay or the label with the overlay. So in this case we have definitely a better name for our CSS files when we are creating it. Okay, so that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you like it, please subscribe, share with your friends and neighbors, and until next time, see you guys.